It's the first edition of Baseball Without Borders, the podcast from the World Baseball Network. I'm Leif Skodnick, joined by my colleague Matt Tallerini, as we get set to recap some of the Winter League Finals series that have already happened, some that are going on as we get ready for the 2023 Caribbean Series in Caracas, Venezuela, which is February 2nd through 10th. Several national representatives have already been decided as leagues in Cuba, Panama, the Dominican Republic, and Colombia have concluded. Venezuela's championship series is going on right now. Curacao sending a national team. And a little bit of news yesterday. Matt, Venezuela, Ronald Acuna in the lineup last night. The Atlanta Braves star outfielder who's been hampered by injuries. Played in 10 regular season games, and then they announced yesterday he was getting into the finals with Tiburones de la Guaira.
Yeah, so Ronald Acuna played in 10 games, and during the Winter League under manager Henry Blanco for Tiburones de la Guaira. And he's also been tearing it up throughout the Winter Leagues. He's been playing really amazing when he has been filling the roster placements with Tiburones. Danry Vasquez has filled in a tremendous role this year. Michael Garcia has been trailblazing for the offensive Tiburones. And, it's going to be a really great series coming down to the wire for the Venezuela final. And both teams will try to earn bragging rights to earn a spot in the Caribbean Series as the host countries for Venezuela. The home stadium for Leones del Caracas is University Stadium. But
Last night's game was there.
Yes, and that will be the practice stadium before the revamp of the games during the pool round of the Caribbean Series.
Right, so teams that are going to practice there, and then they'll play the games the games that are in Caracas at La Rinconada.
Yes, and at La Guaira at Estadio Forum, home of the Tiburones ball club.
Yeah, so either team has the opportunity for, basically the truest home field advantage possible in the Caribbean Series. And the last team to have that was the Cangrejeros de Santurce.
Yes, in 2020, that was the last team that hosted home field advantage for the Caribbean Series. And the year prior was the first year that Panama was in the Caribbean Series in 2019, prior to the 1959 Caribbean Series.
So last night, I watched the game from Venezuela. Acuna really wasn't much of a factor last night. He walked in the ninth and was driven home as Tiburones rallied with 3 runs in the bottom of the ninth, which made it 8-6. And they did get the winning run to the plate, runners at second and third, and then then the game ended when Angel Sanchez flew out. That said, Julius Chacin, great game last night from him on the mound for Leones. 5 2/3 innings, 7 hits, I believe only 2 runs. As Leones takes a 1-0 lead. They were up 8-3 at one point in the game and held on to win 8-6. A little weakness in the bullpen, especially late. 3 runs in the bottom of the ninth inning. You don't like to see that.
Yeah,
certainly.
But
so game 2 of that series is tonight. You can watch it on Baseball Play. That's BEISBOLPLAY. If you Google it, or on their YouTube. I believe the audio broadcast is available on YouTube. It'll be simulcast live with video on Facebook until about the 7th inning. Otherwise, you have to subscribe to watch the video for that game.
Yeah, correct. The subscription handle was also turned out for the whole regular season on the baseballplay.com website. So countering with the winter leagues for even next year, Liga Mexicana del Pacifico will have the same paid subscription app for extrabase.tv. So please check out a lot of the winter leagues that are happening with high affiliate major league prospects.
And major leaguers. I mean, and we're going to talk about the Dominican Republic later, but there are a lot of major leaguers and top prospects playing in the Lidom this year.
Correct.
But first, let's go down to a country we can't visit because we're Americans. The Cuban representative for the Caribbean Series is going to be Agricultores. Out of the first-year Cuban Elite League, which was something they started this year mainly, I think, to one, decide who is going to play in the Caribbean Series, but also to get a look at some players that maybe aren't ready for the Serie Nacional as they get ready for the World Baseball Classic. So tell us what happened in that series. Agricultores erased a 3-1 deficit to come back to win.
Yeah, first time in Cuban baseball history that a team from down 3-1 has come back to win a final. It hasn't been done before, even in the Cuban Winter League from pre-1960. So very interesting to see the first year of the Elite League blossom with a lot of talented players such as Yordanes Alarcón with Agricultores, Yuneski Lodert with Agricultores. I mean, they've had stellar seasons. Alarcón batted .345 with 5 home runs for the whole Elite League season. And Yuneski Lodert batted over 300 at .333 during the regular season and had the game-winning hit in Game 7 of the bottom of the ninth to help Agricultores punch their ticket to the Caribbean Series. This will be the first time that Cuba will be in the Caribbean Series since Las Leonordes de las Tunas played Toros de Herrera in the 2019 Caribbean Series final at Estadio Rock-Caru in Panama City. So very neat to see Cuba back in the Caribbean Series for the first time since 2019. And we're also in the original Caribbean Series from 1949 to 1960. So very interesting to see what the talent can circuit throughout that country for sure during the Grand Caracas event.
One of the notable players during the Elite League season, batting champion Yoelkis Gilbert, .357 batting average. And he's going to be on the Cuban national team for the Central American and Caribbean Games in El Salvador, which is coming up in June. But I believe he was also on the roster at the Caribbean Cup games in Bahamas, which you actually went down to.
Correct. Yes, he arrived in the middle of the tournament. So he blossomed throughout that whole circuit of the 4th Caribbean Cup. That event is hosted by COPABE, which is the Confederation Pan American Circuit for the World Baseball Softball Confederation Americas region. And that event branches rankings with all the Americas and combined World Baseball Softball Confederation events. You saw teams like Curacao. They have moved up tremendously through the ranking methodology system of the World Baseball Softball Confederation. Cuba, which will be in El Salvador for the Central American and Caribbean Games, they appeared in that tournament as a ranking tier for their federation. They played in the championship game against Puerto Rico in the 4th Caribbean Cup, losing. And it was just a great circuit to see guys from Puerto Rico that played in the Comlente League. A couple guys did. And also the AA circuit, which runs through the spring and summer period of each season.
Another series that was decided last week, Federales de Chiriqui won the Pro Base League, which is the professional league in Panama. So they are going to the Caribbean Series. First time for them since 2021 when the Caribbean Series was held in Mazatlan, Mexico. You watched a few of those games, I believe. Tell us what happened in that series, Matt.
It was a great series to follow 2 years ago, right out of COVID. You didn't really know the spectrum of what was going on from the 60-game Major League regular season, along with wiping out the minor league season and the down end of the supplemental leagues and the Dominican Summer League. So you saw a lot of key guys during that Winter League season from 2020 to 2021 just build around their mechanics. I mean, you had guys like Robinson Cano, he's still, prolonging with everything else. Juan Lagares, who played with Aguilas Ibaeñas during that Caribbean series. And Panama had a team that was built around several Nicaraguan players from their Winter League and also the Panama Pro Base League that obviously had their full season in 2019-2020 and then did not have their season in 2020-2021 because of COVID.
And one of the things that we should note for those of you who, like us, are Americans and maybe don't know much about the Caribbean Series, the teams that represent each country are the champions of their respective winter leagues. So the team representing Mexico is the winner of the Liga Arco Mexicana del Pacifico. However, that doesn't mean that all the players are Mexican. It just means that they play for a Mexican team.
Correct. It's all club league teams. They're not based on federation and national teams oversight. So basically, the Caribbean Series has been around since 1949. It used to be countries Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Panama, and Cuba. It was a 4-team field from 1949 to 1960. I mean, there's been players such as Willie Mays that played in the Caribbean Series. There's a list of legends that will be eye-opening for Major League fans to counter in on the history itself with the Caribbean Series.
Let's go back to Panama for just a second. Tell us a little bit about what happened in that final series that Federales won. Johnny Santos, 3 home runs during the regular season, and then led the league with 13 runs batted in. Key player for Federales. What do you see coming out of that team in the Caribbean Series?
I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. I think Panama can easily be a third-place team. It's going to be tough. I mean, you have 8 teams in the field. It's the first time ever that the Caribbean Series has been expanded to 8 teams. And lingering for next year, 2024, that Nicaragua could be a possible invitee down at Miami for the 2024 edition at Lone Depot Park. Panama, they have great pitching. I mean, it goes down from what they can do with their starting pitching. Steven Fuentes was 4-0 during the regular season. Yes, the regular season in Panama was 24 games, but astronomically, it's going to be a short time to get extensive at-bats for the Caribbean Series. In international baseball, you have to adjust right away. This is not 162 games that every fan is used to.
That Major League fans are used to.
Yeah, most Major League fans. And if you followed the World Baseball Classic from 2006 or the Olympics from 1992 before Major Leaguers came in 2000, I mean, it's just the oversight of international baseball is still carrying to this day. But let alone a lot of teams like Cuba pretty much haven't forward from their international landscape since the 2020 America qualifiers. They didn't finish to go to Puebla, Mexico, and would have played in the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. But going back to Panama, it's going to be adjusted with everything else of how they can sustain their pitching against top players from Leones del Caracas or Tiburones de La Guaira out of that series. Tigres del Licey, they're going to have a good team to really build around that could probably go heavy against their pitching. So, it's just going to be an outlook to see what Panama can do. They were 3 outs away in 2021 from reaching the finals of the Caribbean Series. And that would have been the second time a Panama club team had reached the finals since they were invited back into the Caribbean Series in 2019. With that being said, through that game, Aguilas y Baeñas came back and scored 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th inning from a 2-run single by catcher Carlos Paulino, which took them into the championship game of the 2021 edition in Mazatlan to play Puerto Rico for that final.
Aguilas y Baeñas, obviously a Dominican League team that beat the Panamanian team that year. Now let's go to Colombia. Last year, Caimanes de Barranquilla won the Caribbean Series coming out of the Liga Profesional Béisbol de Colombia, or Colombiano. Still learning Spanish, 43 years old. I'll get there one day. But this year it's going to be Vaqueros de Monteria. We both watched a couple of games of that series, but what did you take away from that?
There's a lot of key prospects in high affiliate baseball or have tiered through a major league field in the last few years. You got guys like Jordan Diaz that made his appearance for the Oakland Athletics in the later part of last season. he really toured it up during the regular season. He had 7 home runs combined in the playoffs and the regular season with 29 runs batted in. He's a player to watch, especially for this Caribbean series and upcoming spring training also for the Oakland Athletics. So keep an eye on Jordan Diaz. He will definitely open a lot of Major League fans' eyes for sure this season.
Daniel Velahin, split time between catcher and first base in winter ball. He's in the Cincinnati organization. Gotten a few games last year up top, I believe. Correct? 13 games in the major leagues last year for him?
No, he has not surfaced the Major League field yet. He's still prolonging through Double-A right now, Daniel Velahin. Yeah, but he's not part of the pipeline rankings because of his service time of eligibility. So
because this is his fourth season, correct?
Yes,
as a professional.
So he can have an invitee down in Arizona and possibly play with the Cincinnati Reds later this season.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I didn't quite catch what was going on in your note there. Porfirio Lopez, 4-0 as a starter, 1.04 ERA, and pitched Game 5 for Vaqueros, and was stellar in that game. I watched that game. Again, how much of this is going to come down to pitching, especially against teams like Cuba and the Dominican Republic?
I mean, it's going to be a different atmosphere. I mean, Estadio La Riconada is going to be one of the biggest stadiums that the Caribbean Series has ever been held in.
38,000 seats, brand new, looks beautiful.
Yeah, and it looks like Nationals Park. If you had to have that remedy of any Major League stadium, that's what Estadio La Riconada looks like. And it's all surfaced through Twitter feeds, Instagram feeds, YouTube, Facebook. So go check out that stadium on all social media platforms through a lot of search engines.
Definitely worth a look, although difficult to travel there for Americans. If you want to go to the Caribbean Series, you probably already needed to get in contact with the Venezuelan government to try and get a visa, and the State Department says you shouldn't go, so that's why we're not going. One national team is, in fact, going to be at the Caribbean Series this year, and they're going to be representing Curacao, one of the ABC Islands, a Dutch possession in the Southern Caribbean. And Matt, you saw the Curacao national team a little bit at the Caribbean Cup down in Nassau. What do you expect out of this team? They obviously are not they haven't been playing together over the course of a professional winter ball season, but they're a national team. So if you play for a national team, all the prospects, all the good players know each other to begin with and know what they're all capable of. But what do you see out of the Curacao team as the Caribbean Series draws closer?
They'll put up a fight. I mean, they'll play well their first game against Cuba, against the Agricultores Ball Club, and this isn't an event that will determine the World Baseball Softball Confederation rankings. So I feel like a lot of these kids want to get their feet wet in experiencing a Caribbean Series because Curacao could potentially play in future Caribbean Series down the line, possibly next year in Miami. They're looking into also playing in the Caribbean Series with having a full winter league for the 2023-2024 season. And there's a lot of key guys to watch and familiar players also that have played in the major leagues. Andrelton Simmons, he's a free agent now.
Andrelton Simmons, who played for the Mississippi Braves all 3 years I lived in Jackson, or parts of all 3 years that I lived in Jackson, and was probably one of the best players that I've ever seen in Double-A.
Yeah, so he'll put up a lot of good at-bats through that Caribbean Series circuit, and a lot of Major League scouts would keep an eye on him that could fill majority of the rosters through all 30 teams. So it's good to see him play through that course of the week in the Caribbean Series. Another player that everyone is familiar with, who is on the Detroit Tigers, Jonathan Scope. Jonathan Scope will play in the Caribbean Series this season, and possibly could have a chance to play for the Netherlands in the World Baseball Classic.
Right, so we should talk about that just briefly for those who don't know. Curacao is an overseas possession of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So technically, if you live in Curacao, you are a subject and a citizen of the Netherlands. So that's how Jonathan Scope, Andrelton Simmons, Didi Gregorius, guys like that could play potentially for the Netherlands.
Yeah. So look out for Curacao in the Caribbean series. They will have a lot of scouting credentials for building the Kingdom of Netherlands come Taiwan in the World Baseball Classic. Another player that everyone pretty much has forgotten about, Vladimir Ballantyne. I mean, he's just been blossoming through his circuits with the Nippon Professional Baseball
Yeah,
leagues
there's a guy that was a above average but nothing spectacular major leaguer, goes to Japan and takes off. Now, for years we've been told that Japanese baseball is as good as AAA ball. I don't really believe that. I think it's closer to AA. And we do see a lot of guys that come over from Japan to play in the major leagues that aren't as successful as they were in Japan. And we see guys that were, better than average but not spectacular major leaguers go on to have great careers in Japan. Ballantyne may be one of those.
Yeah, and Ballantyne has opened eyes for a lot of personnel through the Kingdom of Netherlands in their federation. He played in the Harlem Honkball League tournament last year, where Japan brought a college team, and so did Team USA, and Curacao had a lot of their players that were similar, building for the Caribbean Cup during that tournament in Rotterdam.
Harlem Honkball Week, for those who don't know, is probably the single biggest baseball tournament every year in Europe, held every year in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Let's go on to the probably the most prominent of the winter leagues, the Dominican Republic, the Liga Dominicana Profesional, which, if you didn't know, you can stream for free on MLB TV, and it's tremendously entertaining.
Yes. If you are a T-Mobile account user, you could stream for free. Otherwise, you could have to pay for a subscription with the whole MLB season and then include the Lindome season then for a renewal purpose.
Right. So, but if you have an MLB TV subscription, it's essentially free. It's a little bonus that you get to keep you interested over the winter, especially here in New York, where it's been in the 30s for about 2 months. It's been great to watch some live baseball with names that some older major leaguers, a lot of prospects. Ronnie Mauricio, who is probably the top prospect in the Mets organization, probably the top infield prospect in baseball right now, won the MVP during the regular season, and then scored the series-winning run for Tigres del Licey in Game 5 as they beat the Estrellas Orientales 4-1 in the championship series. But so Tigres del Licey has won the championship series, so they're going to be representing the Dominican Republic, and they have a very strong team. They have a team with good pitching, good hitting, and they've just added a bunch of reinforcements, most of whom came from the team that they just beat. It's a little bit funny. I didn't really realize how transitory players were in Winter League ball until this year.
Yeah, like guys like Oliver Perez, who I thought was going to end his career with Tomateros de Culiacan the next week.
The next week he shows up and he's pitching with Estrellas, which was pretty funny because, you wrote that story about Oliver Perez pitching for the last time for Tomateros de Culiacan. And then a week later, not even a week later, I think it was like 3 days later, he shows up in the Dominican Republic League. Now, Tomateros was eliminated.
Correct. Yeah, they did not play in the playoff format for Liga Arco. So the two teams now that are fighting for the seed in the Caribbean Series is Los Carroneros de las Mochis and Algodoneros de Guasave.
Right. So that's the sugarcane growers of Los Moches and the cotton growers of Guasave.
Yeah, and they're both looking to end their Caribbean Series droughts. I mean, a lot of teams from Mexico, especially those two teams, have had historic players come through their organization, but it's time for them to appear in a Caribbean series since it has been a long drought for both of those clubs. And it's cool to see like the likes of Jesse Castillo, who's had a great Winter League season and I think could fill a lot of spots through the La Liga Mexicana de Baseball regular season. That's 110 games. They start up in mid-April, or he could build off playing overseas, either in South Korea and Japan. He's a well-rounded left-handed hitter and had tremendous pop during this regular season.
So before we wrap this up, tonight is the night that the Baseball Writers Association of America will announce which players have been elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And it looks like, and I tweeted this earlier from our Twitter account, which is World Baseball, @WorldBaseball_, World Baseball Network. Look us up on Twitter. Look us up on Instagram. 4 players are definitely going to miss, but they're going to be close. And it looks like Todd Helton and Scott Rowland are going to get in. The 4 players are going to miss but be close: Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones, Gary Sheffield, Carlos Beltran. We've got a poll going. 7 of you have voted. Thank you for those who did. I might be one of the 7, but who cares? Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones, Gary Sheffield, Carlos Beltran. Of those, who do you think will be the first to get in, Matt?
I think Todd Helton, just because he's had.
Well, we're pretty certain he's going to get in.
What's the vote count?
The vote is
percentage.
Yeah, he's over 75. He's got to lose a number of votes from those whose ballots won't be revealed, according to Ryan Thibodeau, aka Not Mr. Tibbs on Twitter, who runs the Hall of Fame ballot tracker. But no, the 4 that are going to miss: Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones, Gary Sheffield, Carlos Beltran. Who do you think will be
What
the
about
first
Scott Rowland?
Scott Rowland's going to get in, I think.
That's what I think too. I mean, he was a stellar third baseman for the Cardinals. Even prior to being a Cardinal, he was great for the Phillies.
You know, the knock on a guy like Scott Rowland is that he didn't play in the postseason all that much because he played on a lot of not great Phillies teams and then, went over to the Cardinals and got into some postseason games there. But you can't fault a guy for who drafts him and where he makes the major leagues, I don't think. You can only play as well as the team that you're surrounded by. If you're a superstar, put Andrew McCutchen playing in Pittsburgh for as many years as he did. If he played anywhere else, he would have probably, had a bigger profile as a player.
Yeah, and especially coming back this year to Pittsburgh, I feel like he doesn't see this as a farewell tour because he just loves being a leader for a clubhouse like the Pirates, and let alone, I mean, a lot of the fans embraced him when he was grown through the organization, and it's good to see this season what he can bring to the Pirates. Even if they're not a playoff team, they will play spoiler against the Cubs, the Cardinals in their division. I mean, it's going to be great to see what the future holds for Pittsburgh.
So of the poll that we're running on Twitter, Gary Sheffield leading right now as the next of those 4 players: Wagner, Jones, Sheffield, Beltran to be in. But I tend to think it's going to be Billy Wagner. I think Sheffield still has the dark cloud of performance-enhancing drugs hanging over him. Mm-hmm. I think Billy Wagner will get in just on the virtue of his numbers. I think he was a solid, if not spectacular, reliever with the Astros and the Mets, but he got the job done for a long time. And over the past 15 or so years, I feel like the Hall of Fame has, I hate to say, become the Hall of Very Good, but there are guys that are in it that are very good. I don't know that they're necessarily Hall of Famers. And then there are, guys that are out that a lot of people think should be in. I thought Harold Baines should have been in, but I think there are guys that are in that shouldn't be. So,
Yeah, and I guess even the controversial stuff with the steroid use of David Ortiz. I mean, great hitter, and let alone who knows if his Hall of Fame is justified pretty much with being a steroid user, but he was so clutch for the Boston Red Sox. He turned his career around after he left Minnesota, and Life, correct me if I'm wrong, but he out of 2003, he signed for 1 year. I think it was like $4 million for the Red Sox.
Yeah, it was a 1 year deal, and he hadn't done a whole lot in Minnesota.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's cool to see some of his highlights with Minnesota were kind of interesting. When he first came up with the Twins in 1998, there was a home run derby showcase that David Ortiz appeared in with Ken Griffey Jr. and Alex Rodriguez. It was at a minor league stadium. Forgot the name of it, but go look up those highlights. It's really cool to see a lot of the display of how baseball during the late 90s. I mean, you remember it like it was yesterday. You had Nomar.
Yeah, I was a
and
teenager,
Jeter.
so
Yeah, like landscaping the face of Major League Baseball. And 98 with the home run chase that brought so many fans to where it was going for the sport.
2003, David Ortiz, $1.25 million with the Red Sox, finished fifth in the MVP voting that year. Won a Silver Slugger, was an All-Star for the first time. So, when you look at what he did in Minnesota, he was there for 6 years, hit 266, 348, 461 as his triple slash line with 58 home runs in 455 games. Gets to Boston, and the story's a little different. 290, 386, 570 slash line, 483 homers in a Red Sox uniform in 1,953 games. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-time All-Star. Never won the MVP, but was second, third, fourth twice, sixth once, 10th and 28th in the MVP vote, as well as fifth in that first season, and also won 7 Silver Sluggers.
Yeah, and he was inducted last year also into the Caribbean Series Hall of Fame when they had the series in Santo Domingo. And yeah, it's interesting to see the layout from international baseball to just just where the sport is growing. In 2019, Panama's Pro League won the Caribbean Series, Toros del Herrera, and the same year, Mariano Rivera was a unanimous vote. The first time ever in baseball history going into Cooperstown with every vote from all the baseball writers. So very interesting ties with international baseball and Cooperstown from Big Papi David Ortiz and Sandman Mariano Rivera.
So to go back to the Tigres del Licey, who are going to be representing the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean Series, some reinforcements added to the roster from the Estrellas Orientales, including Robinson Cano, Gustavo Nunez, Junior Lake, Kelvin Gutierrez, Henry Urrutia, and Moises Sierra. So basically all the best players from Estrellas Orientales are going to be on Tigres del Licey in the Caribbean Series coming up in just 8 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be phenomenal. The tournament's going to span from February 2nd to February 10th, and there will be a third place game. For the first time in a while, the Caribbean Series has had a first place and third place game. So yeah, this is a lot of bragging rights that 8 teams are gonna, soil through in Venezuela. 2 stadiums, possibly next year in Miami might be 2 stadiums with 8 teams, depending if Nicaragua joins. So we'll see. We'll see how the tournament will expand the horizon for most of these teams that will have scouting credentials on building their World Baseball Classic rosters come March. So keep an eye out for teams like Panama, Colombia, Curacao. They will do a lot of scouting improvisions for the Caribbean Series in Caracas.
All right. Well, he's Matt Tallerini. I'm Leif Skodnick. We are worldbaseball.com. You can check us out at worldbaseball.com. Follow us on Twitter. Search World Baseball Network, Instagram as well. And we'll be back probably in a couple of days with another podcast where we talk about baseball outside of the United States in English for those of you who are English speakers and like baseball.
And we'll have a full a pool of all the teams that will be in the Caribbean Series.
That's right. We should know potentially as early as Friday, I think, all the teams that are going to be in the Caribbean Series, and we can go over the rosters and the schedule and things like that.
And Puerto Rico is in Game 6 tonight.
Puerto Rico's Game 6. Gigantes,
De Carolina, and Indios de Mayo
are up 3-2 in that series. So Gigantes has a chance to win the Liga Profesional Béisbol de Roberto Clemente esta noche. And the Venezuelan series is going on. And I believe those are the last. And the Mexican series is going on. The
just
Liga
three
Arco
teams.
Mexicana del Pacifico is going on. So those 3 teams remain. And we will try and get you coverage of all of them on worldbaseball.com.
Along with how to watch the Caribbean Series, which will be on ESPN Deportes.
Correct. ESPN Deportes for the Caribbean Series coming up next month in Caracas and La Guaira, Venezuela. So until next time, smoke them inside.